Hi again, everybody. Welcome again to Enjoy English School. I'm Bruce.
I'm Antony.
Today, in our Origins section, every month we have an Origins section. The origin of something is the beginning or source of something. S-O-U-R-C-E, the beginning of something. And we'll be talking about the beginning of, we can say, us, of the human race.
Yeah, 没错，就到了我们追根究底的单元了 ，The Origins。好，那我们今天要提到的主题呢，你看到我觉得哇超酷的，各位知道吗？老师以前在大学的时候学的是 Anthropology， 就是指那个人类学。好，那刚好看到这个主题之后，哇，老师超喜欢的。什么主题呢？叫做尼安德塔人，人类的远房亲戚。好，问号。
Neanderthals, humans' distant cousins. For thousands of years, humans lived side by side with our distant cousins, Neanderthals. Like humans, they were intelligent beings who walked on two legs. They hunted animals, used tools, and possibly had their own language. Then, they seemed to have suddenly disappeared from the face of the earth. Neanderthals are named after the Neander Valley in Germany. This is where the first Neanderthal remains were discovered in 1856. Neanderthals and humans were similar in appearance, except their large, strong bodies were better adapted to cold temperatures. By comparison, Neanderthals weighed more and had more powerful arms and legs. They also had wide faces, thick eyebrows, and larger noses. Neanderthals were later nicknamed cavemen, as they lived in caves to survive the Ice Age. Although many cartoons describe cavemen as stupid, their brains were actually a bit larger than humans. Scientists also discovered that some humans carry a small amount of Neanderthal DNA. This suggests Neanderthals and humans interacted with one another and even formed romantic relationships. According to studies, Neanderthals lived on the Earth for over 300,000 years. Then, about 40,000 years ago, they seem to have met a sudden and perhaps violent end.
Okay, after we introduced the word anthropology, now we have another one, paleoanthropology. Paleo refers to something that is ancient, not just old, ancient. So that's why it's in the source or in our origins section. We are going to look back at us, human beings, a long time ago, long before people started to write, or maybe even before there was much language, tens of thousands of years ago.
没错，所以我们今天要介绍的这个东西，老师刚刚用到的这个字 Paleoanthropology。Paleo 这个字的字根的拼法是 P-A-L-E-O，Paleo 就是 ancient 的意思。ancient 的话，各位知道是 A-N-C-I-E-N-T，ancient 就是指古代的、很古老的，然后 Paleoanthropology 就是古人类学。
For thousands of years, humans lived side by side with our distant cousins, Neanderthals. So the key word here is Neanderthals. This is from German. Neander is a place name. Tal in German, Thal we pronounce it in English, refers to a valley. Actually, Neander comes from a person's name a long time ago that did research in this area. And in the valley of Mr. Neander, where he lived and worked, they found bones that they couldn't quite explain. They looked human, but not quite human.
Yeah， 没错，老师其实有点破梗了，因为后面他告诉你说 Neanderthal 这个名字怎么来的。老师先告诉你们一点点这个资讯哦。我们先看到这个地方的第一句话，他说 For thousands of years 数千年以来呢 ，humans lived side by side with our distant cousins Neanderthals。好，我们人类呢跟后面的我们的人类远亲尼安德塔人呢，常常就是一起这样生活着的。
Now, cousin in English refers to your mother's or father's, brothers or sisters' children. Those are your cousins.
没错，就是我们的表哥、表弟、堂哥、堂弟、表姐、表妹、堂哥、堂妹这样子，但是他们只要用一个字就好了 ，cousin 多方便啊。
Okay, continuing. Like humans, they were intelligent beings who walked on two legs. When you study Paleoanthropology, we can go back millions of years to when they weren't people yet. They were like people. They walked on two legs, and maybe they made tools, very slowly developing. But if we go back just tens of thousands of years, much more recently, we have a cousin related to human beings, but not quite human beings.
OK， 所以说老师有提到说，如果是几百万年前的话，可能那些类人猿，那种人类似像人类，但还没有像目前现代人那种发展的形态的。但如果你只是回到几万年以前的话，我们就有机会去研究跟我们人类比较接近的这种远房亲戚了哦。所以在这边的话，我们来看这句话说 ，like humans， 就像人类一样。They 指的是 Neanderthals， 好，他们呢 were intelligent beings， 他们是有智力的这种生物 ，who walked on two legs， 他们是用两腿行走的。那如果说今天你看到一个说法是 walk on all fours， 就是指趴在地上，就是四肢都是着地的状况。那相较于那个情况 ，walk on two legs 就是可以站立的行走。
They hunted animals. They are the Neanderthals.Used tools, they made and used tools like people, and possibly had their own language. We'll never know that because they didn't do any writing, and people back then didn't write either.
Yeah， 所以最后呢，告诉我们说 ，they hunted animals， 他们呢是会狩猎的 ，used tools， 好，他们也会使用工具 ，and possibly had their own language， 说不定他们有他们自己的语言，但是我们不知道，所以他就加了 possibly 这个词，因为没有办法，他没有留下任何文字记录，然后后续的这些发展的这种人类啊等等，好像也没有，所以我们无法从中得知。
Then, at some point in the past, they seem to have suddenly disappeared, vanish.Go away. There were no more Neanderthals. From the face of the earth is a way to emphasize the fact nothing, no more Neanderthals.
所以在这边的话，老师又补充了一些字汇哦，像这边地方提到的这个 disappear 消失。好，那这个字的话，老师刚刚还用什么 go away or vanish？ 好 ，vanish 的话是 VANISH， 后面我们还有机会看到这个字，所以不用担心。好，整句话的意思就是说，然后呢 ，then they seemed to have suddenly disappeared。好，突然之间他们好像就嘣消失不见了 ，from the face of the earth， 在这个地球表面上就这样消失了。
Okay, we'll learn more about our cousins after this short break. Neanderthals are named after the Neander Valley in Germany. This is where the first Neanderthal remains were discovered in 1856. The first sentence we really already talked about, except we didn't mention it was in Germany, but I said the language is German. This is where, there was no Germany back then, but where it is now, that's where they found these bones. This is where the first Neanderthal remains. Now, remains, if you have a body, you have bones, and maybe those bones will be around for a long, long time. But remains could also be the tools that were talked about, maybe clothing, anything else associated with part of Neanderthal life.
OK， 所以这个地方我们来看一下第一句跟第二句哦。他这边讲到说 ，Neanderthals are named after the Neander Valley in Germany。老师刚刚其实事实上在第一个开场的时候就提到说，它是来自于德文。然后呢，这边的话，当时当然几万年以前是没有德国这个地方的嘛，但它现在是现指的话是在德国这个地方，是在尼安德谷这个地方，然后它是在德国。This is where the first Neanderthal remains。好，这个地方注意一下 ，remains 是名词。好 ，were discovered。好，它是当时在1856年的时候，这些第一个尼安德塔人，他的这个遗迹，好是被发现，可能是一些他可能使用过的器具啦，可能是一些他的骸骨啦等等，都可以用 remains 这个字来表达。这个字是名词，特别留意一下哦。
Neanderthals and humans were similar in appearance. Appearance is what something looks like. Now, there are cousins, so they don't have 5 feet and 3 heads. They're going to look something like humans, except their large, strong bodies were better adapted to cold temperatures. Well, that makes sense. The farther north we go in the world, the larger animals get. And if Neanderthals lived far north, and Germany is pretty far north, it's not the North Pole, but it's a lot farther north than Taiwan. It's possible that people and bears and elephants, they became very, very large.
没错，所以这边的话，他特别注意到了，他讲说 Neanderthals and humans were similar in appearance， 意思就是指在外貌方面 ，appearance 这个字，外貌方面呢，其实尼安德塔人跟我们现在的人类呢是很接近的。然后呢 ，except their large, strong bodies were better adapted to cold temperatures， 但是唯一的差别是他们呢比较壮，对不对？比较大只一点点，而且呢，他们的这个体型啊各方面比较能够适应寒冷的气候。
By comparison, or in comparison, means we're going to compare two different things to see how they are similar and how they are dissimilar. Neanderthals weighed more. Well, that makes sense. If they're bigger, they probably weigh more, and had more powerful arms and legs to survive in a very difficult climate.
Yeah， 所以在这边的话，他有提到 by comparison 这个地方特别注意一下 ，comparison 的意思就是比较。If you compare two things， 好，在这个时候，这就可以使用到它的名词 by comparison， 就是相较之下呢 ，Neanderthals weighed more， 好，就是指它的体重比较重 ，and had more powerful arms and legs， 它的手跟脚都比较有力气，很厉害的这样。
They also had wide faces, thick eyebrows, and larger noses. So this is, in appearance, a difference between Homo sapiens, people, and Neanderthals.
好，所以这边的话，你看到了，他们 they also had wide faces， 他们脸比较宽 ，thick eyebrows， 好，眉毛比较粗一点点，对不对 ？And larger noses， 就是指他们鼻子呢也比较大啊，相较于我们 Homo sapiens， 好，就是跟我们人类比较不太一样的一个外形上的象征。
By the way, larger noses, the larger your nose, the more air it can take in. And because it takes in through more skin, it warms up. So a lot of animals that live far in the north have larger noses than their cousins who live further south.
哦，所以说今天如果说像是比较大的鼻子的话，它比较有机会去吸收到更多的热能，所以这样的话能够保持自己的体温，不要到会失温而死。
Neanderthals were later nicknamed cavemen as they lived in caves to survive the Ice Age. There have been many ice ages in the history of our world. The last one finished about 12,000 years ago, but it lasted, I think it was 100,000 years or so. Very, very cold. Today we worry about getting warmer and warmer. Back then, they worried about getting really, really cold.
Yeah.
New York City was covered by about 200 meters of ice.
200 meters of ice.
What is now New York was once a glacier.
所以说现在的这个纽约市这个地方，以前曾经在冰河时期的时候200 meters。好，所以说它是
Ice, not snow.
所以是很大块的冰河在那个区域，所以你可以想象，老师刚刚特别提到说，在最后一次的冰河期是12,000 years ago
Finished.
对，就是在12000年以前，最后一个次的冰河期结束。那之前有度过非常非常多的冰河期。那在这句话里面，他提到说了，他说 Neanderthals were later nicknamed cavemen。好 ，caveman 的意思就是指他们是变成这个山洞里的人，对吧？他把它变成住在山洞里的人 ，as they lived in caves to survive the ice age， 就是他是透过躲在山洞里面才度过冰河期的，所以他们又给他一个昵称叫做山顶洞人，或是之类，这是住在穴居人那种感觉。
Although many cartoons describe or show cavemen as stupid,their brains were actually a bit larger than humans, so you cannot always count on appearances.
没错，千万不能只看外貌就决定哦。所以在这边他讲说了 ，Although many cartoons describe cavemen as stupid， 好，他很多时候卡通上都表示摩登原始人，他们原始人都好像很笨，但事实上怎么样呢 ？Their brains were actually a bit larger than humans。这个地方特别注意一下 ，humans 的话呢，它是先加了 s。再加上那个所有格的一撇，就是 humans brains， 好，就是比我们的这个以前的人类的脑袋还是要大一点，所以换言之，他们搞不好比当时的人类要聪明。
Okay, let's think about that and take a short break. Okay, we'll finish up our last paragraph now for today. This is a 2-day lesson, I forgot to remind you.Scientists also discovered that some humans carry a small amount of Neanderthal DNA. Now, if you know anything about biology and DNA, it has to come from two cousins. If it's the big elephant in the Ice Age with long hair, that cannot mate with a human being.But the Neanderthals were related to people. They were actually, some people consider them brothers rather than cousins, but it makes sense that even today, because DNA can be measured to very, very, very small amounts, some people, most of them from Europe or North Asia, have the DNA from Neanderthals.
哇，好酷哦，对不对？好，这边他还讲到说了 ，Scientists also discovered that， 好，科学家还发现这件事情哦 ，Some humans carry a small amount of Neanderthal DNA。有一些人呢，他们居然身上还带着尼安德塔人他们的 DNA， 有他们的血统。老师刚刚提到说，可能在欧洲北部或甚至是亚洲北部的一些人种或是人身上呢，还有机会找到尼安德塔人的 DNA 哦。
This suggests, as I just mentioned, Neanderthals and humans interacted with one another and even formed romantic relationships. It's quite possible that a Neanderthal man and a human woman, or a human man and a Neanderthal woman, would become like husband and wife, or they would be part of the same group. In the past, they believed that people did not bond man and woman as a pair for life. It was a group because there was more power in the group than in individuals. We don't know, but this could also have included the cousins Neanderthals, not just humans.
没错，所以后面就告诉你了 ，This suggests， 特别注意一下 suggest 这个字，尤其在讲研究的时候，如果说有研究显示意味着后面这件事情的话，代表他觉得有这样的现象，但是不敢肯定的告诉你说后面这件事绝对是真的，他会说意味着有这样的现象。suggest 这个字非常非常重要。他说 Neanderthals and humans interacted with one another。好，也许呢这就说明着以前在很早以前，尼安德塔人跟人类曾经有过这种互动跟接触，甚至呢 and even form romantic relationships， 甚至还有联姻，然后开始生下很多很多小孩这种情况。
According to studies, this is plural. We don't say researches, by the way, In American English, it's only singular. According to research, according to studies, Neanderthals lived on the earth for over 300,000 years. So the earliest Neanderthal remains can be measured with instruments that we have that biologists and anthropologists have. So we know when they started and when they ended, roughly 300,000 years, quite a long time.
Yeah, 没错，真的很久，对不对？他就说了，according to studies 根据研究呢，发现到说 Neanderthals lived on the earth for over 300,000 years。好，他们在地球上所居住的时间，从开始到结束，一共有30万年那么久。
Then, about 40,000 years ago, they seem to have met a sudden and perhaps violent end. After 40,000 years ago until now, we have found no more Neanderthal remains. Suddenly, it seems, now that may have been hundreds of years, maybe a few thousand years, but after 300,000 years, there was no more remains of Neanderthals. So something happened that could have been very violent, very powerful, very bad.
Yeah, 没错。所以到后来他就告诉你Then, about 40,000 years ago， 差不多在4万年之前的时候呢 ，they seem to have met a sudden and perhaps violent end。突然间一个很重大、突然间猝不及防的事情发生，然后突然间他们就都不见了。这边要特别注意一下 ，they seem to have met。如果今天你想要是过去的事情，但是又碰到不定词的时候，你有机会看到 to have done something 这样用法。They seem to have met. That means they met or they encountered a sudden and perhaps violent end. 好，突然间碰到一个不可抗拒的因素，好，终结了他们的命运。
Okay, think about that for a moment. Then when we come back, we'll review some of the important vocabulary for today. Remember, we have one more day about our cousins, the Neanderthals. For today's lesson, we have 8 vocabulary words to review. The first one is easy. Intelligent. Seems like a long word. It just means smart.
Intelligent 就是很聪明的，很有智力的。
Now, we talked about this when we saw the word disappear. You can also use vanish, and you can see it right in your book.
Yeah， 第二个字呢，就是突然间消失了 ，disappear， 或者是用 vanish 这个字。
Number 3 is appearance. What something looks like is its appearance.
就是我们的外貌的意思。
Number 4, by comparison. This is a phrase when you are going to compare two or more things.
要去比较事情的时候，你会用到 by comparison， 就是相较之下。
Number 5, nickname. Now, we used it as a verb. More commonly, it's used as a noun. A really tall guy who's your friend, his name is Robert, but you might call him Giant. You give somebody a name, and it shows that you have a close relationship with someone.
没错，就是昵称的意思。好，老师说一个很高的同学，你可能叫他 the giant， 很好笑。
Number 6, cave. Now, cave can be a hole in a mountain, sometimes underground, and then in the Ice Age, you wanted to get out of the ice. So going into a cave is much warmer than trying to live out on ice and snow.
好，这里面的话呢 ，cave 就是指的是山洞。
Number 7, scientist, of course, IST at the end, is a person who studies or works in science.
这是我们讲的科学家。
Number 8, violent. This is very powerful and very negative. It can destroy or hurt something.
Violent 就是指暴力的。好，它这个话通常是要去毁坏或是破坏什么事情的时候，有机会看到这个字哦。
That's it for today's lesson. Please join us again tomorrow, and we will finish talking about Neanderthals for you. Until then, bye-bye.